Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep-end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
Now at McDonald's, a McDouble is $2.50, so you can get your gym gains on. Or just get lunch for only $2.50. Get more value on the under $3 menu.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Everyone for picture! First positions, everyone! Yo, go!
And action! Hello and welcome to episode 370 of the Filmmakers Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk filmmaking, from indie film to studio films and everything in between. How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to royally F it up, in our very, very humble opinion. I am Giles Alderson. I'm a writer, director, and a producer. And on today's show, we have the director and writer, Sam Boyd. He's here to talk about the brand new film, Genie, which you've probably seen all over your telly boxes at the moment because it's starring Melissa McCarthy and Paapa Essiedu and Mark Maron, Ralph Brown and Alan Cumming. This is written by Richard Curtis. Yes, the Richard Curtis of Love Actually and Four Weddings and a Funeral fame, and is produced by Tim Bevan, Eric Fellner from Working Title, and Reva Marker. This film is a fairy tale. It's a comedy about a workaholic man, played by Paapa, who enlists the help of a magical genie to help him win his family back before Christmas. Sam Boyd not only is a fantastic guy and a brilliant director and writer, he also listens to the podcast, so that makes him a double winner in my eyes. Myself and Dom Lenoir sat down and had an amazing chat with Sam all about how Genie came about. How did he go from making shorts to his first feature film, to making a TV series, to making working title movie, Genie? It's a nice leap. We talk about how Sam pitched to Working Title, what it felt like pitching and talking to Richard Curtis, why confidence and the fact that you need to keep working and making films is vital and important. But what's more important is relationships, and why those general meetings that you might have with people might not pay off that day, that week, that month, but maybe in a year. We also talk about his hit TV series, Love Life, which he wrote and directed, that got him to the attention of people like Richard Curtis and Tim Bevan and Eric Fellner. He also talks about casting, the whole chicken and egg situation, how you can't get cast without money, but you can't get money without cast. And what do you do about that? What do you do when you lose finance as well? And he talks about why he nearly gave up and then he tried one more time. His first feature film was called In a Relationship, which starred Emma Roberts, and which was based on a short film also called In a Relationship. He'd made a couple of shorts before that, one called 10 Fingers and one called Happy Fucking Birthday. Oh yes, he has. And now he has made Genie, which is what myself and Dom Lenoir sit down to talk with Sam about. Big shout out to all of those who came to our networking party last night. Big hello to all you. Thank you so much for coming down. I really enjoyed myself, and so great to see so many amazing filmmakers. Shout outs for those who've been amazing this week on the social, to Danny Mulhern, John, aka Writing Ted on X, Jewel Jessenberger, or aka Nerd Life is Tough, Guy Lambert, Paradum Gaitam, and Lucille Howe. Big shout out to all you amazing people. Next week on the podcast, we either have femme directors whose film literally took home some biffers last night, or we have Oppenheimer, or we have the team behind Oppenheimer. Yeah, you heard that right. The team behind Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. We have the editor, we have the costume designer, the hair and the makeup team behind Oppenheimer. So one of those will be for you next Tuesday. I've got to try and fit a load in before Christmas, everyone. But I hope you're doing things to make your films and TV shows happen. It's a strange time right now, but that doesn't mean you can't make things happen and you can't push and go to networking events. And there's a lot of Christmas filmmaking parties to go to and pop your head in and just be there. Because like I say, and like Sam says, meeting that person might not make a difference today, tomorrow, a month, but it might make a difference in a year or two. When they say, oh yes, I remember them. Yes, now I'm looking for that kind of a project. You just never know. So have all your ducks in a row. Get ready for your filmmaking challenge, because it is a challenge, but you can do it if you want to. Right, for now though, this is myself, Giles Alderson, and Dom, talking with director of Genie. It is Sam Boyd. Have fun.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Sam, pleasure to meet you. You all right?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Yeah, good. We were just talking how nice and cold it is today.
Yes.
In London.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Los Angeles at present, but I was just in London. We did post in London, so I spent a good amount of time. It's the best.
You know then.
I do. I luckily was mostly there over the summer, but it was getting a little nippy as I finished up my time there.
Yeah,
it can get nippy. That's London and England for you. And being in it, you were obviously in England because it's Working Title behind this as well, behind Genie. How cool! That must have been a treat for you.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I think that was how it all started. Was sort of I had made a couple seasons of a show that I created called Love Life, and then. Was kind of making the rounds and had a couple meetings with Working Title and one of their executives. At the end of the second meeting, she sort of was like, oh, there is this other script we're, putting together. It was written by Richard Curtis and obviously the combination of Working Title and Richard Curtis, they made most of his movies. And, in addition to a number of my other favorite movies, kind of staggering amount of my favorite movies of all time. Whether most of the Coen brothers movies, most of the Edgar Wright movies, and all the way back to like My Beautiful Laundrette and Sid and Nancy. I mean, the producers Tim Bevan and Eric Fellner, just the coolest and the best. They have the best taste ever. So getting to work with them was really incredible. And so I read the script, and to be honest, I was sort of like, oh, I don't know that they're necessarily going to want me to direct this. I had never directed a studio movie before and was just coming off the show. But I was like, maybe I can at least just like meet Richard and Tim and whatever and met them and hit it off.
Definitely.
And then it was very nice. Richard saw Love Life and really responded to it and wanted me to do the movie and we were kind of off to the races.
I love that.
Completely agree with you. Like Working Title, I'd say that one of the most consistent like filmmaker sort of loving, they just do great stories like across the board. They've got such a good track record. What was your kind of experience going into that meeting with them? What were you trying to sort of get across? How did you prepare? Because I mean, it's a big meeting for like anyone to take.
Yeah.
To, work with a company with that much prestige.
Definitely. I mean, I think for me, especially because, the stuff, Love Life, the show I made, and this movie I made before that, and, kind of everything that I had, generally I write stuff too. So I'm, this was the first time I directed something I didn't write really, aside from a little bit of TV stuff. And the stuff that I had made, Love Life and my first movie,
In a Relationship,
which was tiny, were these kind of like grounded relationship things. And, I always was interested in romantic comedy as a genre, but also really only interested in like the kind of classiest examples of it, like I never was just the like, I love all romantic comedies, but really, obviously thinking about Annie Hall and When Harry Met Sally and The Apartment and all the way back to, Preston Sturges movies and, other Billy Wilder movies and stuff like that, Philadelphia Story and whatever. Like I was very, very into the sort of classy rom-com, not to denigrate any others, but I think Working Title really is, the epitome, especially in this day and age, the sort of the total home of those kinds of movies where it's like, I mean, their track record's so astounding, but I think especially because even like their populist movies are like good, you know what I mean? Which sounds backhanded, but I mean it. It's like a hard thing, which is like, even the ones where you're like, oh, that's just like a big commercial movie, it's still good and it's still smart and none of it is like insulting to the audience so much, that stuff can be. And And so, I think going into that meeting, I tried to kind of, it's hard because it's the kind of thing, it's like anything. It's, I was in that situation. I end up, lucky enough to then be on a Zoom with Richard Curtis or sitting in an Italian restaurant in Burbank with Melissa McCarthy. And you kind of have to put that out of your mind because if you just think about, oh my God, this is this incredible person I look up to and are they going to like me and is this going to be okay? You kind of just have to like compartmentalize that. Otherwise you'll go crazy. And so you just pretend it's anyone and you kind of just try to be yourself. And, and you take a lot of meetings like that. And then, the people that you're kind of, I think, meant to connect with or that get what you're doing or are into it or trying to do similar things, that connection just forms pretty organically. But yeah, it was amazing. And Tim Bevan, one of the principals of Working Title, who, was obviously one of the producers on the movie, is incredible and hilarious. And
it's so important, isn't it, that to go into those meetings not only prepared, be ready, be open to it, but also to not freak out, like you say. You're there pitching to Richard Curtis, one of the most established rom-com producer, writers and directors out there. And that, like you say, and to just go, do you know what? I'm just going to pretend this is just a normal pitch meeting with a normal person, not my hero. Was the first few minutes a little bit freaky, or did you just go, no, you'd prepared your head in the, you'd done the Superman pose before you went in and went, no, I'm just going to get through this.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, definitely. Look, I mean, the thing with Richard specifically is he is so warm and hilarious that it's kind of hard not to just get into a flow with him. But it always helps, obviously, in that situation specifically, where like he had seen my show and was a fan of it. That makes it a lot easier, obviously. And I think, and in general, it's like, and I know this is obviously like, I've listened to your guys' podcast and really enjoy it.
Thank you.
Great.
And most of the questions I'm getting today are about like, what would be my wish if I had a genie or something like that. So, happy to get a little more into the weeds.
So, next question.
I've been holding that for like 10 minutes.
Cross that off your list. But,
damn, no more questions.
And excited to get a little more into the weeds of like the process. It's funny because it's, you hear about general meetings or whatever, which is essentially just a meeting where people are like, oh, just meet, and it's not about anything specific, and maybe you'll like each other. And a lot of them kind of come to not. But I've also been really lucky that some of them, it's like even, the studio executive that ended up being the studio executive on this movie at Universal is someone I had a general with when I was 24 and had made my short film and was probably unduly confident at that point. And, in the meeting with him going, I remember calling my agent afterwards and being like, oh, it was amazing. Like, I think it was great. And he was just sort of like, yeah, cool, but like you're still nobody. He's not gonna like hire you to direct a movie, whatever. So, it wasn't until I was then, what was lucky enough to go off and make a couple seasons of this show, which I will say for anyone listening in the UK is on Netflix, both seasons, called Love Life.
Love Life, yeah.
But basically, the more work you do too, the easier it is to be in those rooms and to sort of like look those people in the eyes. And, it depends because there's obviously, people take all different approaches. I'm more of the like, stammering, like people ask me what I do for a living and I say, writer and director while like looking at the floor, it's like, I'm not quite the like, well, like I'm a filmmaker, kind of guy. But yeah,
I think
be a good thing.
I think it might be a good thing.
Yeah, but I think it's just all about the work anyway. I think the more that I do, the more you see. It's just like, writers write stuff and directors direct stuff, and the more you do, the more chances are people will see it and like it, and the more you keep at that, the more, the better you feel, the more comfortable you feel in those rooms, being able to talk to people and being able to kind of hold your own.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you've sort of got into talking about generals as well, because I think a lot of people, they get these big meetings and not in the case of this one where they're actually, okay, here's a project, here's someone we're interested in. It's a general meeting and they go in there and they try and like pitch for one thing and then they go for broke and then you don't hear from them again. But actually it's a lot of the time it's building a sort of relationship, isn't it? Like,
definitely
come back around
definitely
and building that
definitely.
network so it's easier down the line.
Yeah, and I think, and again, it's like I've had those pay off in a lot of ways where it's, even with Love Life, the producer of that was, Paul Feig and his production company, and an executive there named Dan Mignante, who, became a close friend of mine. And Dan and I had a general again back when I was, in my mid-20s or something, and still kind of, trying to push the ball up the hill, but didn't really have much to show for it yet. Was maybe a little premature, but we met and knew each other. And then when I, 5 or however many years later, wrote the pilot for Love Life, and he read it and wanted to do it, it was like, oh, I know Sam. And, those things do come back around. And as you were saying, it's so much about relationships. And I think it's hard. It's like, I think about it a lot in relation to, obviously I write this stuff about relationships or about romance or whatever. And it feels very similar to that to me, in the sense of like, there's the cliches of, you can't find love if you're looking for it. And, you can't you sort of have to pretend, you don't like them or whatever. And it's like anytime I've ever been like, this is the thing, here it is, like, you're going to love this. It's like crickets fully, and it's like, you have to sort of trick yourself. It's like, I think about there's the opening of Swingers, where the whole dialogue is like him being, talking about romance, and he's like, you have to pretend to forget about her. And he's like, well, sorry, he's like, what if I pretend to forget about her? He's like, no, that's the thing. You have to really forget about her, which is obviously catch-22. And, and for me, it was like, the story I like to tell that I think, again, as a listener of your podcast, I would imagine, would be interesting to fellow listeners is, I was like writing a movie in my 20s, a feature, and I was like, this is the best idea anyone's ever had for a movie. I'm going to win the screenplay Oscar. Like, here we go.
The next Matt Damon, Ben Affleck. Yep, it's me.
I spent like 2 years writing it or 3 years writing it, and I was like, this is it. I obviously talked it to death, told way too many people about it. Everyone's like, that's an amazing idea. I had nowhere near the skill level necessary to pull it off. So I wrote this, I wrote it. And as I, the whole time as I was writing it, I was like, oh, well, I guess I need a writing sample for TV or something, maybe so I could try to be a writer's assistant or something like that. So what was that idea? Oh, Love Life. Okay, whatever, and it was like this like secondary thing. But I think that was what tricked my brain into just letting it be like what I wanted it to be, and just writing a thing that was funny and interesting to me. Instead of, what happened with that movie and what happened with basically everything else I had ever written up to that point, which is like, it just becomes overcooked, because you hear it's another, it's a cliche of like, you got, don't think about what other people want, just write the movie you want to see. And it's easy to be like, yeah, of course, obviously, like, duh, but it's also really hard not to accidentally kind of subconsciously go like, oh, well, they're going to like this and they're going to do that. And, it kind of happens a million choices you make over the course of writing something or making something. It's really hard. It's really hard not to let that happen, even when you don't realize it, So I always tell that story about Love Life because it's like, I literally gave the movie that I was writing to my agent, and he was like, it's not really fun or entertaining. He's like, I'm not sure about, he basically was just like, you're a loser, like, go away. And, then I wrote, and then I gave him Love Life, and he was like, and again, it's not even, the dream is something of like someone tells you you're a genius or whatever, but it was literally just as simple as the binary thing of like, finally
you're
I wrote,
a genius.
He was like, oh yeah, I can do something with this.
Yeah.
Oh, let me try. Yeah, I can do something with this. And then he sent it to a producer, and it was that was a very charmed trajectory where it was like Paul Feig's company wanted to do it, like I was saying, and then, but again, it was like I still was just like, maybe we can develop this as a script or something. I wasn't insane and being like, this is going to be a TV show. And then it was like this crazy thing where, you hear obviously in Hollywood, like the magic word is no and whatever. And if I had been like, oh, like, let me send this to Anna Kendrick, she never would have read it. Nothing ever would have happened for sure. And instead what happened was my agent in his staff meeting, like, mentioned Love Life. Her agent was like, oh, can I send it to her? My agent was like, no, they're not casting right now, which is like insane. But obviously great, because then he was like, well, I'm going to give it to her anyway. Like, fuck you,
sneaky.
Or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then the first thing I ever heard was like, oh, Anna Kendrick read it and wants to do it. And is like, because, but also probably only because she thought she wasn't supposed to have it. You know what I mean? It's all such like, it's just this like, and when people talk about luck, it might sound like false modesty, but that's the kind of thing that I think it really is a lot of luck. And that is, to me, like a very specific example of how it works, where you're just like, how could you could never contrive that ever.
No.
And it's just like, that's how it happened, And so with this too, it was like a similar, it's like, I think it was really fun to get to know, Ali Lowy, who is the executive at Working Title that I met with in the first place. And, she was a fan. But yeah, like going back to, some of the earlier questions, it's like when you spend your life making like grounded, character-driven relationship movies, and then suddenly you get the Working Title meeting, like that is like it's like, oh, I've been practicing pitching my whole life, and now like the Yankees want to meet me. It is like,
yes,
it feels like that. And so it was definitely like, oh, this is a place that I feel like I'm like meant to work, or they make the kind of movies that I've always thought about. And it was a dream to, meet them, have it go well, and get to work with them. And now I'm, and it was so great and went so well. And now I'm developing something else with them too, which I'm excited about.
Woo-hoo!
And, they just are like, the coolest place for that kind of stuff. So it's sort of, again, it's like if I had been, to me, it is the equivalent with Working Title of like, I make these like talky rom-coms. It's like literally if you're like if you're obsessed with horror, and then one day it's like, oh, Jason Blum saw your movie.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's that feeling. And it was very lucky again, so.
I think there's one point that really like stood out to me, and I think it's something that like so many filmmakers get carried away with, and when you're sort of making the comparison with, relationships and the industry. And it's about, I think when people, they're trying to get a specific actor, or they're trying to get a specific producer, they think that like going in with the sort of extreme passion and, I really admire you. And it's such a natural thing to go in that you think that would actually get them interested and set you aside. Right. But actually, like the more you say about it, like if you actually just want someone to talk to you on your level, very casual, and not be overselling it. I think it's a huge, thing, especially for like going after cast, or producers or even companies, is to oversell yourself as indie filmmakers. I think that's such a big point that you've kind of brought to
definitely, and and again, I think it's why it's such an important, it's why obviously you say stuff in the meetings, you try to charm people, whatever, but it's like you have to let the work do the talking a lot of the time too. And I think, and when I think back on myself again of like, again, I love your guys' podcast. But I'm like generally obsessed with, and have been very lucky to like find my footing at a time when like podcasts about filmmaking exist, where you can listen, listen to all these incredible interviews, and it's like what I do all the time. My wife makes fun of me because I'll literally do it for like, I'll like put in one AirPod for 3 minutes while I'm like taking out the garbage, and she's like, you just listen to 3 minutes of a podcast, and whatever. Yes. But that as a resource is so incredible, and still is so incredible. I mean, I think, so much of it was like, having that resource, but being younger or young or old doesn't even really matter, but it's just like having made less stuff before I made more stuff. And it's like, it definitely gets easier and easier to have those conversations the more you make and the more you let it. But again, loving podcasts and stuff like that, I have a whole thing in my notes app of like quotes, and mostly about filmmaking, but this one's not specifically, but basically like those who know don't speak, and those who speak don't know, or whatever. But just in general with that kind of stuff where you're saying overselling yourself, or just, saying too much, it's exactly the same as you go on a date and you're like, well, I'm really like the nicest, coolest guy that like you'll ever meet. And
I'm not a serial killer.
You would probably love to date me, I think. It's like, it just doesn't work, obviously, and generally, I mean, it's such a weird thing, but it's like a lot of things in life, generally the things you think you want or the things you think you're ready for, you're wrong. This is just my experience, but it's like you're wrong. And a lot of the time it's like the thing you're like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense or whatever. It's like even, it's like you just end up surprising yourself, and to me the big, the thing, I've been really lucky to like keep working and keep getting to make stuff, but a lot of that has been about going with the flow of the river, kind of, as opposed to going like, oh well, because I am a huge movie nerd and grew up idolizing filmmakers where it's like, okay, Wes Anderson or Sofia Coppola or the Coen brothers or whoever, it's like they came up with their next movie and they're going to go make it because they're like one of the 10 best filmmakers in the world.
Yes.
And, it's not like, oh yeah, we're trying to do this and we're trying to do that, whatever, which is a much more like common approach if you're lucky enough to get to work in this industry. Like, obviously there's very few people who are those like singular auteurs. And so for me, it's like, the more that you can, it's funny. It's like the older I get, the more I idolize like people who just do the job, and sometimes it's their thing and sometimes it's not. And whether that's, whatever, more recently, Richard Linklater or Steven Soderbergh, or all the way back to like Michael Curtiz or whoever, it's like, Michael Ritchie's someone I think about a lot, who like, has directed some amazing movies, and it's just fun to think about, I don't know, the sort of again going with the flow of the river, and not just thinking, and again, I would, the last thing I want to do is say that on this podcast and talk, the next Barry Jenkins out of like making their singular masterpiece, or the next like, Edgar Wright or whoever, what I mean? And maybe you're that person. That's awesome. But like, I think at a certain point I just was like, oh, I love movies, but also, yeah, okay, I usually write, but wow, this is a Richard Curtis script. Let's see what that would be like. And having that be this kind of fun experiment for myself,
Well, let's talk about the flow of the river then a little bit, and going back, because, I feel like your trajectory is really big. Like you said, all that time you were grafting beforehand, really before Love Life took off, and you'd made some shorts, Happy Fucking Birthday being one, and then in a relationship, which became the feature film, I imagine, with the same title. So I imagine it was a short to feature, right? Yeah, yes. That's to us is fascinating, and the fact that In a Relationship happened with some great cast in there, and I love that you keep using British actors as well. I think that's really cool. Janet Montgomery was in that one.
Yeah.
And then who I had worked with years and years ago, and then with Genie as well, with
Paapa, yeah.
Yes, exactly, and I think that's really important. But your trajectory is massive. So if you don't mind talking about going from you writing and pitching and it not going anywhere to making shorts, to suddenly going, I'm going to make a feature out of my short In Relationship. Talk us through that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was really lucky to like early on, again, like I was just saying, it's like I was always a movie nerd. I was like the insufferable, like 12-year-old kid talking about, I was like going to see Gangs of New York when I was 12, or just like, ridiculous. Excellent. Like, and
did you have the beard then as well? Was the beard still, was it around at 12? Did you have a little bit of fluff, anything?
No,
to
I
get
had
you?
nothing.
How did you get in?
Nothing at that point. Nothing at that point. The beard wasn't until COVID. But yeah, so it's like I was lucky enough to always know that was what I wanted to do.
Yes.
And I think for me, the making shorts was a big part of it. I think I went to film school, which can be great, but also isn't necessarily for everyone. Certainly doesn't matter really. I think the thing that matters more is, again, doing the work and writing things, making things. But I think especially for me, making things that are more character driven, I would write, but then it was kind of like, I have to make this, otherwise it's kind of useless. Like, I used to joke that it would be like, I would write this stuff and it's like, and again, I'm not making a qualitative comparison at all, because this is one of my favorite movies and I don't think I've even touched it. But, it's like, I would joke that it's like handing someone the script for Tiny Furniture. You know what I mean? And you're just it's like, no, you have to see the movie. The whole point is that she made the movie. You know what I mean? And you can watch it, and she's also great with actors, and the filmmaking's amazing. And, and it's like, but if someone would sit down and read the script for Tiny Furniture, it's like, that was really only intended for like the people who helped her make it, basically, And so I think I early on realized like, oh, I have to make this stuff. I can't just, I'm not going to like sell some huge spec writing like essentially purposefully low concept character driven romantic comedies. You know what I mean? Like best case scenario, I have to be good with actors, learn how to do this and make stuff, and so it was sort of that hustle, but then also, again, going with the flow of the river and just trying to be smart about it every step of the way, where it was like, okay, I made a bunch of shorts, and like you said, there was one called Happy Fucking Birthday. There were a couple other ones where the whole idea was, to be honest, I was like at film school and everyone would like spend all this money, which I didn't even have to spend. People would spend $30,000, $50,000, $75,000 on their first Sure.
Wow.
And then it's like, if your short has an aerial unit and you've never worked with actors before, you're making a
horrible
mistake.
idea.
So, it's like,
horrible.
I mean, again,
Don't do it.
unless you're like James Cameron or something, and it's some, but I'm just speaking from my own experience. There's many different ways to do it. So I don't want to talk anyone who is more technical out of that. But it's like, I think I looked around and saw a lot of people make expensive shorts that were bad because why wouldn't they be bad? They'd never done it before, you know? And so for me, it was like, and especially then again, Tiny Furniture and that sort of like post mumblecore, it was like, oh, you can make a movie on a DSLR. You can, you know, at the time it was like a 5D or a 70. I don't even know what you would shoot something like that on now. But it was like, oh, you can, you know, every short I made before In a Relationship, and there were a bunch of them, was like, we shot it in a day, maybe two.
Yeah.
It didn't cost anything except I would like buy lunch for everyone.
Exactly, bit of food.
You know,
maybe pay the
and
focus
you know,
puller.
some of them were okay, some of them were bad. People haven't seen most of them, but also it's like that's how I learned how to do it.
That's how you
By the
learn,
time, so that by the time In a Relationship happened as a short, it was the first one where it was like, okay, let's put a little bit of money into this. You know, still, you know, it cost like $20,000 the whole thing.
Amazing. Great.
You know, but it was like, again, luck and stuff and just timing where like, you know, that short starred Nick Braun, who obviously now, you know, we know from Succession, and Dakota Johnson, who was kind of just about to be in 50 Shades of Grey, which was amazing. And again, that was very lucky timing. And I made that short, and we put it out right when Dakota was coming out in the first 50 Shades movie, so that was really lucky. And it was like, oh, Vogue, put it out, or whatever.
How did you come across those two, like at that particular moment? You know, was it sort of casting director? Had you seen them in something? Like, how do you sort of?
I saw them in something together. Basically, I met Nick Braun at a party, at a friend's birthday party, and I had seen him in a movie that came out. I think it came out under the title Date and Switch, which was like a movie from like 10 years ago or something. And Nick and Dakota were in it together, and they were amazing in it. So basically I was a fan of his. I just always, you know, to me, a lot of it is just the gut instinct with casting and stuff of like, you know, and obviously I keep saying lucky, but you know, I do think that's one of the things I'm best at is the sort of, you know, casting instinct kind of stuff. And I met Nick, and I was like, oh, do you want to do this short? He was like, yeah. And then I was like, what about with Dakota? I know you were in that movie with her. And he was like, yeah, let me see what she's up to. And then basically she said yes. And then it was like, oh, yeah, a friend of mine who was on a desk at CAA, you know, and I was, the other thing is I was very lucky to grow up in Santa Monica. So my family is not in the industry, but my, you know, I went to Santa Monica High School. I grew up around a lot of kids where it's like their parents were people or whatever. So it's sort of, I don't know if it's like Nepo baby by association, but I feel like it would be a shame not to acknowledge the fact that I grew up in Los Angeles. That helped a lot. You know, but a lot of it was like, you know, then when people start to become actors, you know, it is easier to know actors and stuff like that.
It is, but also if you were a dick, if you weren't nice, they wouldn't work with you. So again,
of course. Yeah.
As much as you might know these people and met them because you happen to be in the same circles, that's also you were with them when they weren't anything. You know, and if you're nice, they go on the journey with you, right?
Exactly.
That's the point.
Exactly. And you know, and so that was the case with Dakota, where basically a friend of mine was like, hey man, she's about to get 50 Shades of Grey. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. But like, I was like, she's never going to do our short now. We hadn't shot it yet. And then I talked to her, and she was like, no, she'll do it, but like you have to wait until right after she'll do it after the first 50 Shades movie. I was like, that's crazy. So she went off and shot the 50 Shades movie, and then we shot it like 2 weeks after she got back.
So you got the agent. You got the agent to agree, or is that like?
No, that was just my friend who like heard on an email chain, oh, she's gonna get this part. I think with Dakota, we didn't even tell her agents because it was like they would have been like, "What the fuck are you doing in this short?"
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
We didn't tell them. We didn't. I think I was all just like direct. Like, you know, she grew up in LA too, obviously, and I had friends. I didn't know her really, but we had friends in common, so it was all just like social.
I love
and
that.
Basically, she did it, but it was, you know, but again, it was like it's always down to the wire. It's always like, I remember like I was a director's assistant at the time, and we were shooting in Atlanta, and I came back for a week to shoot the short, And I remember it was like, okay, I'm getting on a plane and we're shooting in 2 days, but Dakota didn't show up for any of her fittings. She won't respond to anyone, and we don't know if she's even going to be on set in 2 days.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, and I was like, I gotta just get on this plane and hope she's there. And then she was there. She was amazing.
Yes,
But it's like, it's always like that. It's like, the thing the other image I always think about is in broadcast news. You guys seen broadcast news? You know the part where there's a part in it where Joan Cusack, they're like down to the wire where basically they did this piece and it has to be on the news in like 90 seconds.
Yes.
But they're like trying to do one last like overdub or something. And then there's this whole sequence of Joan Cusack takes the video and she's running and she's like ducking under filing cabinets and tripping into shit, and she gets it in at like the last second and it goes on the air. It's like, that's what it always feels like. It's like even when you're lucky, it's like this fucking crap. And so with that, it was like, that's another example. And and then basically I'll be talking for like 2 hours if I don't speed this up, but basically I made that short. Some people saw it, which was cool. It got kind of passed around a little bit, which was nice. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm making it into a feature. That had always been the intention. And again, I wanted to make it cheaply, and there were movies like like Crazy and stuff that were coming out at the time that you could do that, kind of proved that you could do that. And then I wrote the feature, and people liked it and stuff, but it wasn't like setting the world on fire. And it's the sort of, this is another thing that I always want to impart is like, it was this classic thing of like, okay, well, I think we can make it for 1.5, let's make it for 1.5. And it was like, okay, no one wants to make it for 1.5. Okay, well, we can make it for 1.25. And it was like, okay, well, no one wants to make it for 1.25, so we can make it for 1. And then it's like 900K, 750, like, whatever. And you're like,
we can make it for pennies. We'll make it for chocolate coins.
Exactly. Exactly. And so we ended up, and I ended up making that movie, and it took 3 or 4 years, which is kind of still in, financing an indie movie time is kind of a miraculously short amount of time, 3 or 4 years. But basically, finally it was like, oh, I guess we're making it for like 590 all in. And it was, and again, I started at like 1.5, just pulled that out of my ass. So it was like, but again, that's the thing of like, that was a line I remember. I think it was Christine Vachon, who's obviously one of the great indie producers, who said, she's the best. She was like, if you put your house on the market and it's not selling, lower the price, and it was just like, it was like, well, like, we're going to figure out how to make this movie for 590, and you scale it down and you call in favors and do all that kind of stuff. So, it was, again, this sort of by hook or by crook, like it's, from the outside, it's very charmed that it's like, oh, I made a short, I made a feature, I made a show, made another season of the show, and now I've made a studio feature, which was amazing, but it was definitely like through sheer like white knuckle force of will the entire time, and tremendous amount of luck, and it's not the like, oh, I directed Safety Not Guaranteed and then Jurassic World, or whatever.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But I'm working, and I'm very grateful, and it's very fun, and and basically it's like, then I wrote Love Life, like I was saying. Yeah. And I think it's not like anyone was like, what's next from the interrelationship guy? But like the fact that I had made that, then when Anna wanted to do Love Life and they were like, who's directing the pilot? And I was like, I am. No one had seen Interrelationship, but if I hadn't made it, they never would have let me direct it. So that's like that kind of thing too. It's like, it's not like anyone was like, what's next for you? Again, it was just kind of push and get lucky.
Yeah, putting yourself in front.
I had to have done that work to be able to then take advantage of the next step.
You can't reason with the sun. Trust us, we've tried. This summer, it's time to put that angry ball of fire on mute. Columbia's OmniShade technology is engineered to protect you from the sun's harsh rays that can burn and damage your skin. The sun is relentless, but so is our gear. Level up your summer at Columbia.com to spend more time outside and less time slathering on aloe lotion. You're welcome. Columbia, engineered for whatever.
Was there like a moment in the middle of that when you were in that 4 years? Because I mean, it sounds like everything else was kind of like, I've made something great, people are taking notice. In that 4 years, was there a lot of struggle to get the right producer? A lot of like, I don't think this is happening.
Yes.
What was your process in trying to put that first feature together?
It was that feeling all the way through, even shooting it and everything. So it was, and that's the way it is. It's, it was like, the thing that's always hard with putting a first movie together and an independent movie is like, it's like, the sort of catch-22 of it is you have to you need the actors to get the financing and the financing to get the actors, right?
Yes.
So you basically, to actors, you have to pretend the movie's paid for, but you can't get the movie without the actors. So it's this it's this crazy thing. And basically, yeah, you sort of, it's hilarious. I mean, I think there should be like a documentary or a mockumentary or something made in that world at some point. Cause it's like, you literally go like, oh my God, like, I'm meeting this guy, like he's like a vitamin billionaire and like he's gonna pay for my movie, and then he like talks to you and then you like never see or hear from him again or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
There's all these like, weirdos and just like amazing
so many of them.
people.
So many of them who tell you they have money for your film.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable lies.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Just madness.
Yeah. So the number of, I mean, look, and I'm happy to say it again, just because it's like, this is for people that are interested in this. And I always appreciate in listening to these podcasts, candor, but it's like literally, it's like, I used to joke that with putting Interrelationship together, I could make a coffee table book of emails of actors dropping out of the movie. Because it was always like, and they were amazing. I mean, it's like, and this is insane. No one would even believe this, but it was like literally like Donald Glover was attached to be in Interrelationship for like 3 months.
Wow.
And I was like, oh,
the glove just didn't fit.
And then it was like, oh, he's got to go to Atlanta. He's like shooting this pilot,
something.
What's it called? It's called Atlanta. It's like, okay, well, I think that's going to end up taking up some of his time. And, and it did or whatever. But, you get those, it's like, yeah, you have actors attached, then you lose them, then 1 week you have three of the 4 actors, and then you have none, because something happens and whatever. So you just are like, again, pushing that boulder up the hill, as much as you can. I mean, the thing that I always remember is like, there was literally a point at which, again, there was a company that was like, basically like, we will make your movie. We're going to make your movie. We're going to pay for it, whatever. Kick the tires on all that stuff. And it was like, oh my God, this is happening. And then they bailed. And it just was like fully crushing. And I literally got to a point where I was like, to my, she's now my wife, but at the time was just my girlfriend. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was like, I need to get a different job. I was literally thinking about what else can I do, and this didn't work. I tried, but it didn't work. And she was like, just try one more time. And I tried one more time.
You should marry her. Great wife.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And then we got the 590, and we got the fucking great cast that we did, and we went and made the movie. But again, and it was premiered at Tribeca and stuff, and we were lucky to have it distributed by Vertical and stuff like that, which was really cool. But it was amazing. Again, it was definitely just like the pounding. I think he says in Jerry Maguire, like it's definitely a Cameron Crowe line. I think it's Jerry Maguire, right? Like an up at dawn, pride swallowing siege.
That's exactly it.
There must be so many people at that stage of giving up. Just in general in like the filmmaking process. Like it's always so nice to hear that you get the other side of that, because I think so many filmmakers, until they've had that one big hit, that is always the feeling, is like, okay, well, what if that hasn't happened, or this hasn't happened, and we've got this. And
it's a constant uphill battle. It absolutely is. And what do you think the turning point was from In a Relationship film? What do you think the thing was that made it click to get the green light?
You mean in terms of the movie finally coming together?
Yeah, to find all that time of cast, money.
I think it was just, honestly, it was the right number, the right budget, where, you find people who go, oh, wow, I don't want to make this movie for $750. I don't even want to make it for $590. Sure, that sounds good. Some of it's just fine. It's just lucking out the right people in the right moment. And obviously another cliche is people, is like, oh, all it takes is one yes, which is true. It's like, I mean, even with Love Life, everyone passed on Love Life except for the people that bought it, and it became a show. So it's like, that's a whole other crazy side of it too. It really does only take one yes. And, I think in the case of In a Relationship, a friend of mine, whose name is Adam Paulson, who's a producer and a manager, who at the time was like a, assistant becoming an agent, kind of young go-getter in the film finance department at CAA. And he introduced me to a producer named Jorge Garcia, who is really cool. And Jorge just, I was just really lucky to meet Jorge, and he was like, I'm going to get the money for this. And he did, and so again, it's just, I think it's just, you can't, it's like any of it, you can't force it, but it's like, you also, it's the other joke of like, the harder I work, the luckier I get. It's like all you can do is keep your head down. And that's the other thing. It's like, I wrote so many things that made people shrug, whether it was that movie I was joking about that I thought I was going to win the best screenwriting Oscar, best, screenplay Oscar, whatever. But it's like, I wrote a bunch of stuff that people were just like, this is fine, whatever, I don't care about it, and then it's like, oh, great.
Well, like that meme, isn't it?
Yeah.
The guy on fire, this is fine.
Yeah, full pilot and lookbook that like is just like a thumbnail on my computer that no one will ever see. But also it made me better when I wrote the next thing. So you have to do that, and you have to You have to keep pushing and keep working.
It's so important to do that, and you're so right, Sam, to go, if you don't write that first thing, you can't fail enough to go write the thing that will get made for you. It's so important. And speaking of relationships, going from in a relationship to relationships, like on Genie, we've got to talk about Genie, obviously. The relationship there.
Let the genie out the bottle.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. It's the second one he's done. You missed one earlier. It was really good.
I've been quite good this time.
Yeah. And look, what an amazing cast. Really, the fact that your relationship with Richard Curtis and the fact that he said, yes, I want you, from watching Love Life as well. I think it's really lovely that someone who has made an indie and has made a TV show that they've written can get a chance to make something as massive as this and incredible as this. You know, Melissa McCarthy's amazing in this. Alan Cumming, I've loved for a long time. His book is amazing. Paapa Essiedu.
Yes.
Louis Guzman. Again, this. I love the cast you had. Really, really cool. What was the moment like when you got the job? And then did you go, oh shit, I've got to do it? But was Melissa McCarthy attached to that point? You
she
said you
wasn't.
met her.
Yeah, there was no cast. So we, that was something we kind of all figured out together. And I think the second we kind of thought of her, it felt like a really exciting direction for it.
Yeah.
To be totally honest, the script that I signed on for, it was actually her character was written as a man, because obviously in the original, it's Lenny Henry. And then we kind of decided, hey, what if we flip this, and will it feel a little more modern or a little more unexpected? But yeah, there was no cast attached, and so. I think obviously, again, it's the chicken or the egg thing of like, the studio wanted to make the movie, but we needed to find an actor that people like to see in movies, and then it was amazing that Melissa wanted to do it, and that's the other thing is like with casting, if each piece that you get makes the next piece easier, so that it's like all this, whatever, and even not just with actors, it's like definitely Melissa wanted to make a movie with Richard, you know what I mean, for sure, and so did I, and so it's like. The second, it's like Richard makes it easier to get Melissa, who makes it easier to get Mark Maron and Paapa, and
It's always that first piece, though. It is always that first piece.
Yes, definitely. And I think if she didn't want to do it, I don't know what we would have figured out or what version of the movie would have even happened. Because, to be honest, I was only really interested in doing it with like a certain level of cool and interesting actor. So there are, other actors that, maybe would have been brought up that it didn't make as much sense to me. So it was very lucky that she wanted to do it, and that was the version that was exciting to me.
Yes.
And I think it was just, again, casting is really almost everything. It's you hear that a lot. It's really true. I mean, I think at least for a certain kind of directing, but I think really any of it. But it's like, at least for this kind of directing where it's character driven, whatever. It's like, literally. I would joke about this on Love Life all the time, because it's like, I set this task for myself. It's honestly now why I'm like, I made Love Life for like my whole 20s. I'm like, oh, I love Before Sunrise, and I love these I love romantic comedies that don't have plots, basically, which are really hard to get made.
Really hard to get made.
And I would be like, oh, but the point is it's not about anything. I laugh at myself now of like, it's like, it reminds me of like in Adaptation when he's like, I just want to make a movie about flowers, like whatever.
Yeah.
That's
a great movie.
The best. The best. But I think, but I think it's like, I was like, oh no, the point is it's not about anything. And then, being through the ringer of like making Love Life, having so much fun doing that, being really proud of it, but also it was fucking hard, and literally to go like, okay, not only is every season a new lead, so you have to reboot the whole show every season. Every episode is a new love interest, and if it doesn't work, you're fucked, And so it's basically like, and then there's also not a plot, so you're basically tasking yourself with like, oh, if I don't make like 20 half-hour Before Sunrises with new couples every time, it's just like it's tough. And so it was like, I used to joke about that, where it's like, I did that to myself, obviously, but then you come out of it and you're like, all right, guy gets a genie, let's go, here we go.
Let's go. Like, this is it.
Because it's hard to, it's really hard. I spent a lot of time being like, oh, I'm writing, it's like something, it's like The Big Chill or Dazed and Confused. And it's like, okay, go write the best script ever then. Because otherwise it's like useless. And then obviously on top of writing a really good script, you have to find the right actors, and you have to, be lucky enough for that to come together in like the perfect way, And I think that was the thing with Richard, and I, when we started talking, and then we started talking about Melissa, started talking about Paapa, and there was, we knew from the beginning, it's like, this is really a buddy comedy. Those actors have to be amazing and lovable, but they also have to be perfect with each other and kind of perfectly complement each other in terms of like skill sets.
Yes.
And for me, it was like, oh, Melissa's obviously hilarious. Everyone knows how funny she is and loves how funny she is, but she's a really amazing dramatic actress. And, I love Can You Ever Forgive Me? And a lot of this, even, but the whole point is like, even with her funny stuff, there is like a kind of emotional truth at its core.
Oh, yeah.
And then with Paapa, it's like he's from like the Royal Shakespeare Company. He's literally playing Hamlet, but he's also hilarious. So it's like we needed that almost like yin and yang, where it's like, okay, now the funny stuff, has a sort of like truth to it, and a grounding to it, but then also the serious stuff is kind of, got a light touch and a lack of pomposity,
Sam, honestly, thank you so much. We do have to wrap up now, but I love this movie. I love Genie.
Yeah, brilliant movie.
So
Thanks, guys.
Fun, so light, fluffy, everything I wanted for this kind of movie, and I was warmed.
Everything
I got
you could
emotional.
wish for.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
So if you could give us 3 wishes.
Okay, good.
I don't want any of that.
No, it's okay. 3 wishes.
Oh, 3 wishes for your next film. Right, go in 4 seconds. Oh dear, I love it. Listen, thank you so much, Sam. You've been amazing. Really appreciate you coming on and chatting to us.
Thank you guys. It was a pleasure to talk, and I love listening to the podcast.
Oh, brilliant.
Great to meet you.
Really nice to meet you.
Thanks, Sam. Take care.
Cool, guys.
See you later.
Bye. So there we have it. What a chat that was with Sam Boyd. What a great guy he is. So much knowledge for you to take away. I really liked how he pitched the movie and how he believes that it's a long-term process, and that's what filmmaking is, and that's what it is for you, dear listener, to go out there and actually make your film or TV series, just as Sam has done. And if you're lucky enough to rise up and do well, it is your duty to give that genie 3 wishes and then send the elevator back down for all those others at the bottom to help them rise up as well. So until next Tuesday, when it's very likely we have Oppenheimer, the girls behind Christopher Nolan's epic, or it'll be femme directors. So the choice is mine. So until then, till next Tuesday, take care, and I hope you have a great week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.